I'll never work a closing shift again. I got my current job as a cashier at a grocery store for one of the nation's largest grocery store chains, somewhere in April 2018. I was 20 years old. It was one of my first job I'd ever had that wasn't working in fast food. It quickly became my favorite job I'd ever had just for that. At first, those feelings didn't last longer than a month. So the store closes at 11. And a typical shift for me at the time was 3:30 in the afternoon until midnight. The hour between closing time and the time I punch out is supposed to be spent cleaning registers and emptying trash cans. But almost every night I have to spend the first 5 or 10 minutes checking up the last remaining customers who ignore the store closing announcements and are only just now making it up to the checkout. On this particular night, sometime in late May of 2018, I was just about to close down when an older man walked up to my lane. I glanced at the time quickly and saw it was 11:13 p.m. Asshole, I remember thinking to myself. If you're not going to bother to get in line until 13 minutes after we close, you should honestly just go home. Of course, I'd perfected my customer service voice working in fast food, so I put on my widest, fakest smile and gave him a cheerful hi. Do you happen to have your rewards card renewed tonight? By any chance? Instead, the man shook his head. His face was exceptionally worn, and his eyes were incredibly baggy, making him look like he should have gone to sleep hours ago. Nope, just this. Thanks, he said quietly, almost muttering, as he placed something onto the conveyor belt. At first, I couldn't tell what it was. Something from the meat department, maybe, until it began to cry. I physically recoiled as I realized what it was. It was a baby, a naked human newborn baby. And when I say newborn, I mean it looked like it was just only minutes or hours old. It hadn't even been cleaned up yet, and it was wearing what looked like a hospital band around its ankle that had a barcode in it. Unsure of what to do, I looked up to my manager for help, but he just gave me a wide-eyed, desperate look and shook his head. I looked back at the man. Well, he asked in the same quiet, mumbling tone. Aren't you gonna scan it? I froze up for a second, but then, confused and scared, and not knowing what else to do, I scanned the barcode on the infant's ankle. I don't know what it was expecting, but it did ring up. Spawn. 10 and 89 cents. $10.89 for this newborn child. I stared at my screen in disbelief, trying not to think about the fact that in my state, the only items that don't have sales tax are food items. A second later, I was interrupted by the irritating beep, beep, beep that the card machine makes once the customer's payment had gone through. Another second later, I heard the whir of the receipt machine. The man grabbed the child in his arms, and then he stood there just looking at me. It took me a second to realize he was waiting for his receipt. I gave it to him, and he nodded. Thank you, he mumbled, taking the receipt from me and turning around to exit. Still in a state of shock, I waited for the man to be gone and immediately made my way over to my manager to get an explanation. I opened my mouth to start asking questions, but before I could even get a word out, he interrupted me. Don't. He began desperately shaking his head, and I noticed the wide-eyed look of fear on his face. Just don't. Don't ask about it. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was how terrified my manager looked. Or maybe it was just how surreal and terrifying the entire situation is. Or maybe it was just because I knew that nobody would believe me. But for whatever reason, I listened. I did try to go to the police afterwards. Exactly once. The 911 operator who took my call accused me of making a prank call. And even after I persisted and got the police to actually come out to the store, they found no evidence to support my claims. I was told that I could be arrested if I continued to make calls, and nothing ever came of it. I tried to quit. I was told by my manager that it was a really bad idea, and that I would be putting myself and my loved ones in very serious danger if I did. He told me that he'd been harmed badly by someone years ago for trying to quit. He wouldn't go into any more detail than that, and told me that I really shouldn't ask questions about it at all. Somehow, he seemed to believe that whoever it would hurt him would know if I asked about it. And so that's how that became my life. Every 2 or 3 weeks, at seemingly random intervals, the same man comes in to purchase another infant. He gets in line 12 or 13 minutes after the store closes. And he always does it when there's nobody else in the store. Nobody interacts with him. And I've learned by now to just stay quiet and check him out. The less I say, the faster I move, the sooner he's away from me. It's more than 2 years, and I still go home every night it happens and lay in bed all night, shaking, never able to sleep. I've never told a single person, but I just got home from work and it happened again. So I'm not going to be able to sleep anyway. And since I've run out of things to do during my sleepless nights, I figured it might help to type it out. That I can probably get away with it as long as I'm vague enough about where I live and where I work. Just got a job offer at a different grocery store recently, and I accepted. So hopefully, I won't be working here much longer. I do have to call them and make sure they're not going to make me work in closing shift though. I'll never work another closing shift again.